Good evening. Okay, is that me or is that the chair?
That's the chairs that they're putting down. That's what I said. That's the chairs.
Oh my God. It's because last time when I started talking, it was like, but I don't think you can hear me. Can you?
Oh, okay. So eventually we can turn it off.
Hello, good evening. How is everyone doing? Staying cool? Okay, I'm going to try to put this up here and then we can start. Can you all hear me okay? Yes? Okay, I'm going to try not to get anywhere where the microphone squeaks. But good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wortham Oaks Elementary. I'd like to thank our hosts, Ms. Almanera and Ms. Garza back here for allowing us to hold our meeting on their beautiful campus. Thank you for attending our regular growth and planning meeting that we have scheduled. Dr. Ball is going to be here. She's just running a little bit late, and so she asked me to go ahead and open up. We are thankful and grateful, as always, to see our community and our stakeholders here to work hard to make decisions that are in the best interests of our district. And so we are going to begin our meeting with our agenda as usual. We are going to go over last week's meeting, which was not a regular meeting. We actually called an additional meeting, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I know most of you were here for that, but some of you were not. But as usual, we will recap so that everybody is on the same page as we start moving forward. Safety and security is the hot topic on everybody's mind right now. It always is, but it's heightened just because of recent events. And so we want to make sure that we don't lose focus on that. And so we are going to talk about, as we're preparing for the new school year, the types of things that we have looked at and assessed and are doing to make sure that we are ready and prepared for the new school year. So we'll take a few minutes to go over the things that we are doing. We will talk a little bit about timelines, the purpose of our last meeting, and what our recommendations mean moving forward. We'll have a chance to do a little question and answer session, and then we'll wrap up, and you see, I think that's me, but it's not. Okay, and every time I'm like, I'm really far away from it. Okay. And then we'll wrap up and we'll move forward, and I believe our next meeting will be in August at the ERC, so one of our administration buildings. So just as always, we like to start our meetings to remind everybody about the committee priorities that we all came up with when we first started these growth and planning committees. We all got together and thought and brainstormed all the different things that were important to us, and we came up with these priorities in which we would use as a foundation to base all of our decisions. Since safety and security is of our utmost priority and our focus right now, I just wanted to highlight that we do have safety as one of our committee priorities, and so it definitely aligns with the direction that we're going. So meeting 6. We called another meeting because we really wanted to talk about what was the feel and what was the pulse of our parents and our staff. And so we sent out a very quick survey to our parents and our staff. We didn't reach the broader community. We definitely know that that is something that we want to do moving forward, to reach out to the broader community so that we can get a better feel for where they are as far as supporting bonds and supporting the things that are happening in our schools. But we did poll to see, was there a need or was there support for a bond specifically for safety and security, just in the wake of some of the things that have been happening, not just Uvalde, but some of the other tragedies that are happening in malls and open places. Everybody's really worried, everybody's scared. So was there support? We also asked a couple questions on if people were in support of going for a school bond that was specifically for security. What do they think the appropriate time to put it on a ballot would be? So we asked that question. We also asked a question on how they felt about supporting a small tax rate increase. And then we asked them to rank some security and safety items as what they felt was most important to them, so that if we did go for a bond in the near future, we would be able to have a more recent list of priorities based on what we already have looked at and identified, and then based on what the community thought was needed. So, before we went into the results, we did define the difference between safety and security. I think that when we start talking about it, the two words can be intertwined, and people use them kind of thinking the same meaning, safety and security. We thought and felt as an administrative team, and also some of our board members, thought that clarity between the two terms would be important, especially when we started looking at our list of things that we would include in a safety and security bond package. So you can see up here we have some definitions straight out of the dictionary. So we have some official definitions of safety and security, but we brainstormed and talked about what does safety and security really mean to us in terms of putting items together and projects together to put a bond package together. And so for safety, our team has defined it as those actions that we're implementing in and around campuses that would prevent or protect somebody from accidental injury or harm, okay? So that would be things like playground improvements, making sure that the surfaces are all rubberized and safe so it would prevent students from falling. When we look at security, we are thinking about those specific actions that are implemented in our buildings to defend and provide an environment that feels safe from danger or threat from a person, from a group, from a natural disaster. So those are the things like security cameras, fencing, those kinds of things where we're protecting somebody from infiltrating our company, our buildings, our schools. So in that survey, we asked people to prioritize some of the items. We have already done some internal assessments. We do have some data from external assessments, but we had some pre-identified priority items that we thought we would include or would be good projects to put into a bond should we go for something specifically for safety and security. So these were the results. They're color-coded based on our definition of safety and security. You can see everything written in red is about security measures, automated lockdown ability, access control, and security cameras. And everything in blue is that safety element, those things that we're implementing and putting in place to prevent that accidental injury or accidental hurt. So bus replacements would reduce the amount of time students are on the road traveling, drainage and grading improvements, track replacements, playgrounds, even in new middle school so that we can address some overcrowding at some of the other ones. What you see in orange, we discussed in the last meeting, could fall in both categories. So when we're looking at air conditioning gymnasiums, that's definitely a safety concern because we don't want our students or our staff to overheat and have heat exhaustion and get sick, accidental injury, right? But we also want the ability to close that gymnasium down in case of an emergency. And so we would need some security features to be able to accomplish that. Same thing with site fencing and repairs. Those type of things could fall in both categories. We're preventing people from coming in, but we're also preventing kids from maybe wandering off and getting lost accidentally. So, moving forward, we had lots of really great discussion in this last meeting. The survey that we sent to parents and our staff members, we were really thinking about pushing and recommending for a security and safety bond for November of 2022. Those results that were from the parent and staff survey indicated that they wanted and would support a November bond. But when we started talking a little bit more in our last meeting, we talked about some other realities as well. Things like we won't have all of our assessments complete in order to really figure out what priorities are needed. We talked a lot about acting appropriately so that we can inform our community of all of the things that are needed in a bond to garner the most support. So when we had those discussions, we also talked about early voting ballots coming into homes by August 29th, which wouldn't give us a lot of time to really inform the community about the importance of our items and those sort of things. And so when we talked as a committee, we then took a poll and a vote, and then the committee's recommendation that they would like to take to the board is that they would actually support and recommend a bond for May 2023. They want to make sure that the community is well informed, and then also with an understanding that this would be a comprehensive bond, so it would include some things that were in our original bond that did not pass. But of course, we would go through those same processes, prioritize things, and we would also have a strong safety and security focus, okay? So that's basically what the recap is from last meeting. We had several questions about some of the surveys and some of the work this committee had done, and we polled our group here. What are the things that we should stop doing? What should we keep doing? And what should we start doing in terms of safety and security? And one of the things that rose up to the top was we need to fix the things now that we can fix now. So we have been spending a lot of time over the summer assessing, checking campuses, walking campuses, really looking at our emergency operating plans, looking at our access, and looking at what are some of the things that we can address now to be ready for the beginning of the school year. And so we wanted to take an opportunity to share some of those things. And I have a few people with me today that are going to share those updates, and you are welcome to ask any questions. I do have Mr. Terry Yacklin, our Director of Operations. Or maintenance operations. Maintenance operations.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. I just want to touch base on a couple of things like Nicole said. You know, we could really reach out and do some things that needed to be done, just improve some things that we're doing pretty good, but we just want to do some things that will improve the security, and I'll give you an example of one. We have a few older schools where the exterior doors, they lock, but you have to lock it with a key. Our new schools, the exterior doors are locked all the time. You'd have to dog down these panic bars to actually unlock them. So we're going throughout the campus to take those locks and change them out to where the door is locked all the time. So I would say there's about 15% in the district. Did they work? Yes. Did they lock? Yes. But did you have to remember to lock them with a key? So we're just going to make sure that they're locked all the time. So those were some improvements on the exterior doors. As you know, we added doorbells to the front of the school because the front doors are going to be locked. And now if you want to get in, you have to do what? You have to ring the doorbell because you can't get in because the door's locked. So those were little things that we were able to do to improve the exterior as well. Also, there's some older schools that have doors that go from classroom to classroom. So the doors in the hallways could be locked, but is it important to make sure that door between the classrooms are locked? Yes, it is. It never really came up on our radar, but now it has come up on our radar. So it's important that we go and we change those locks out and switch those where you can lock them. And yes, it is. That was a small percent, maybe 10%. We saw that as a need, so we went ahead and went after that and did that. We just felt like it would add security to the campuses. Were we doing anything wrong? No. Could we improve it? Yes. So that's what we decided to do. Also, one of the things we're checking is if the exterior doors lock. How many of you have left the building one time and then you're waiting to hear if that door clicks and shuts behind you? Who's ever done that? and all of a sudden you didn't hear a click. Well, the little hydraulic systems on there, we want to make sure that it's closing the door. Does the door work from a locking standpoint? Yes. Is the door locked? Yes. But did it shut behind you? Nobody really thought of that. So we are also finding and getting work orders in to change and make sure we adjust those hydraulics to where when someone just rushes out the door will actually shut behind them and it will latch. Those are just little things that some people just don't think about that we could miss. Also, there's fencing around the district that we are improving. One of the things, are there holes in fences that we need to repair? Yes, there was. You'd be surprised, you can go in the far back corner where kids use it as a shortcut, and you would never know unless we tore those fences, in which we've done, and we were cleaning up some fences and also looking at other types of gaps on the campuses that we can't close. So that's what Nicole was talking about, the low-hanging fruit that we can go after currently right now, and which we did. So with access control and cameras, I think I'm going to hand that. Any questions first before she comes up? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to know, just from last month, I believe last June, that you guys are starting with the doorbells. Are all the schools have doorbells now?
Currently, they all have doorbells.
I just want to ask.
That's correct, Lacey, correct. All of them do have doorbells.
Because it's an even before the school year ends, they already have one. So I just want to know if all the schools have one.
Yes. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you, Lacey. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. Wanted to share some information about some of the things that we are doing. So access control is one of the things that we are working on. So we had some additional funds, and what we have found, I know I've told this committee several times, that the strike plates that read the card readers based on the system that we currently have, those are on back order, and we got some really, really bad news that they were on back order even further than the February 2023. So we started looking at other solutions, and we actually have found a different solution. So we will be, over the course of the next 5 weeks, replacing the existing system with a new system, which will also provide the strike plates for all the locations that are currently. So most of the campuses like Hopkins, Woodlake Hills Middle, and so on, that don't currently have badge access into the front of the buildings, they are all currently wired. We are simply waiting on the badge reader plates for the doors. So those will all be installed and those will be done. So we are working on that. We will be replacing those across the district. We still know that there's still work to do in terms of that. So there are additional places, and we're not going to state where, but there are additional places across the district where we could add additional ones to other doors. For the time being, those doors will remain locked. As we get the existing ones all on the same system and all of that replaced, we will then begin looking at the other. So in terms of what we can do now, we can get all of the existing doors where they need to be in terms of the front of the school buildings and those main access points at all the locations that have been waiting. So that is in place. We are currently continuing to add cameras to the campuses. So we are doing what we can, where we can, in terms of upgrades and changes there. Is it a district-wide replacement? Absolutely not, which would be something that we would look at, and we discussed in terms of the bond for that. But we are working on adding additional cameras. Training is also a huge piece of that. We are going through training with our staff. We are preparing additional training. We have also, I know we've talked to this committee about revising some of our procedures for check-in and so on. So utilizing some of the resources we have. One of the things that is not up there is most of the campuses currently have, and they will all have by the time school starts, the ability, there are lockdown buttons from the front office. There's usually one in the principal's office, and there's usually one in the secretary's office where they can hit that button, it automatically locks the door. Now, what I'm going to tell you is you have to understand what that means. So I do want to explain to the committee what that means when we say an auto lock button. It does work for the badge readers. So what it does, if the door is locked, which the door should be locked, it has a badge reader on it. You punch that button, it disables that badge reader, which means there's no access to the building unless you are outside of that building with a key. So if there is someone we don't want in the building and you activate that button, it's going to turn off that badge reader and keep that door locked where it can't be accessed. There is not a mechanism on this earth that is available that is going to lock that front door or lock any door if the administrator or a person on the campus has either unlocked the door so that it remains unlocked, or if you use the Allen wrench to unlock the door, like the doors back here that we have right now with the push bars. If that door is unlocked, there isn't a mechanism that we can put in that you can push a button inside and it undo that lock. That doesn't exist. So locking of doors is one of the main procedures that is absolutely important. The access control that we're putting in at the fronts of all of our buildings, absolutely essential. It allows us with the doorbell, I can ring the doorbell. It also allows me to press a button and allow somebody to come in through that access control. But if there's someone we don't want, we can press that control button and it locks that door, and those badge readers are no longer good. And you cannot get in or out of the building without a key. So those are some of the things in terms of technology that we're doing related to these upgrades. Obviously, there's a great many other things we would like to do, which is the continued work, and many of the suggestions that you have provided to us through the work of this committee will help us to get there. So does anyone have any questions? Oh, yes, ma'am. Very good question. So in terms of budget, I did budget some funds. So each year we do create a technology budget, and I did budget some funds for cameras. We do also have some funds available from the 2016 bond, and those are earmarked for various projects. Currently, the funds that we're using are budgeted funds that were approved by the board for the either access control or for cameras, and so that's what we are using for the access control pieces. So that will take care of most of those budgeted funds for that. Should we decide to go out for additional cameras, we could potentially use 2016 bond monies. However, we are hoping to wait for our safety and security audit to come back to help us make sure that what we utilize those remaining bond funds for are the top priorities, which we have a pretty good idea of where we think they are, but sometimes having the outside eyes looking in to provide us that report gives us additional information about that. So there are dollars available to provide some of those additional. I can tell you there is not enough of the 2016 bond monies to replace cameras district-wide and to do everything that needed to be done. But yes, we could utilize some of those funds to increase the numbers of cameras that we put in. So in terms of providing a public document that outlines where we do and don't have cameras and that type of information, no, we don't publish that, and there are security reasons for not publishing that information. If we let all the bad guys know where our vulnerabilities are, that gives them additional leverage to be able to come into the building. So we have identified all of those locations. We do know where we have camera outages. We have been working this summer with installations and replacements to replace cameras district-wide that we know were not functioning. So when you say you know that your campus doesn't have any that work, I would beg to differ, but at the same time I understand that we have had some outages across the district, and we do have places where we can improve. Absolutely, I would not disagree with you 100%. We absolutely need to improve that, and we are working towards that end. But in terms of providing you with a list of exactly what comes first and where, there are some security risks with letting people know it's being swapped out at this location and that location. There are additional security risks if people know, oh, hey, by the way, they're replacing these because they don't work. So there are some issues in terms of providing that publicly. I know when we meet with our school board, we do provide them with information and updates on that on a regular basis. However, we do that in closed session in order to protect that information because it is a security risk.
If
Yes, and I was going to say we appreciate your feedback and your comments, so I would reiterate what Ms. Conoyer has said as well. I know exactly the situation that you were speaking to, and I know that our office has addressed your particular concern there. We will be happy to speak with you further on that, and I know that Ms. Conoyer would as well. So we definitely appreciate the feedback. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs, and I am aware of the one specific location that you are speaking of. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lacey. Another thing we just wanted to address is that our staff is going through a lot of different trainings right now as well. And so in terms of safety and security, we are going through some required trainings and drills and all kinds of getting a lot of good information and scenarios so that we can also help prepare our staff prior to coming back and receive children. So in addition to the training that we are receiving, we talked about this slide in a couple meetings ago, but I just wanted to reiterate that we do have some campus safety protocols that we are putting into place. I'm sorry. And so what we did towards the end of the school year was we looked at, thank you. We did look at some of our protocols, and we knew that we needed to reevaluate them and tighten them up and make sure that they are really followed with fidelity. And so just as a reminder, we are going to implement and hold accountable everyone to these security protocols that we did agree with. One being wearing your badge at all times, and I only took this off because of the microphone, so I do have it. I'll just put it right here. We are tightening up and making sure that our visitor entry protocols are being followed. We are taking IDs. We are signing people in. One of the big ones that we've already addressed a couple of times are these doors. They are going to remain locked, and they are going to remain closed. And we were talking about your exterior doors and your interior doors. We talked a lot in the last few meetings about how in order to provide the most safe and secure environments, sometimes the practices that we have to take and the procedures we have to put into effect can cause inconvenience. And so while we have these doors locked, it may be inconvenient to walk to a door and unlock it, to let a student in and out to go to the restroom. It might be an inconvenience to have to stand in line to check in, to visit your campus, and to walk the campus. And so while they are or may seem a little bit inconvenient, a lot of these things are very necessary in order for us to keep the fidelity of what we want as far as safety and security procedures. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were reminded that we are putting some of those campus security protocols in place. A lot of them were already in place. But as we had talked about before, sometimes as time goes on, you get comfortable. And then sometimes you get a little relaxed. And right now is the time to really tighten up and make sure that our campuses are aware that badges have to be worn. Doors have to be locked. Gates have to be locked. If we're taking trash out to the dumpsters, you've got to lock the gate behind us, take the trash, come back, unlock the gate, go in. So those kinds of things are going to take a little bit more time. They're going to take a lot of getting used to because we have to get tighter on these procedures to make sure that we're consistent and that we are doing the same things across all campuses. So before I move on to some data and timeline considerations, I just want to, I know she walked in. Oh. Okay. Well, Dr. Ball is here. She says hi. She had to take calls, so she's out. But I also wanted to recognize some of our board members, current and past. We have our board president, Ms. Jennifer Rodriguez, is here joining us this evening. We have trustee Suzanne Conoyer. We also have former board member, Mr. John Harris. Thank you so much for being here. So I just wanted to recognize some of our special guests and thought partners as we move forward in this work. So I want to talk just a little bit about some data and timeline considerations. As I mentioned before, in our last meeting, we called kind of an additional one just to see where this committee was and how they wanted to proceed as providing a recommendation to the board on where they felt comfortable about when we should put a bond or call for a bond. And so I wanted to bring back just a little bit of data because as we were having these discussions on what would be better, November, what would be better, May, some questions came up on have we been more successful in May? Have we been more successful in November? So recently, the administrative team and a couple of board members were there as well. We had received a brief training on just some bond legal updates from one of our legal firms that we had worked with. And they provided us this chart and this data of school bond elections for all the districts and their pass rates. And you can see coming all the way back to 2011, just the trend of passage rates for bond elections across the state of Texas. So you're looking at so some of the questions were, do more bonds pass in May or in November? And when you're looking at all of the districts, you can see that for the most part, the differential is not huge, right? So you have like 2011, that's kind of a bigger gap, but some of the other ones are pretty close as far as passage rate overall. The yellow highlighted squares indicate a presidential election. But what I thought was interesting and just wanted to point out, which I think that if you are watching the news, and you know when inflation hits and all of the things with COVID happened, when we start getting into the bond election in November 2021, the differential is huge. The disparity is quite big. So we do have districts passing bonds, but at 55% of the entire state versus the year before at 88%. And so something is happening. There's legislative changes, there's all this stuff going on in our economy, inflation, lots of things. And then when you move up to just this past May, you can see that the passage rate was at 53%. And so looking historically, there's a lot of success in the prior years of school bonds passing, but here in the very recent, it's dropped a lot. So this chart underneath gives a little bit more of a breakdown on your May, November, and May and November bonds in the year 2020, 2021, and 2022, separated out by the types of propositions. Your general bonds, bonds that included stadiums, natatoriums, recreational or athletic propositions, instructional technology. So a little bit of interesting data to show just on the state of the state when it comes to bonds and them being passed. So we've got work to do, right? Let me just show you a little bit of Judson data because that also came up in our last growth and planning meeting. And I wanted to make sure that we did just have a general idea of what our history looks like. The main question, just because we had been teetering back and forth, does this committee recommend May or does this committee recommend November? And so I think for some people wanting to see the history might have swayed them a little bit. We didn't have all the information right at that time in our last meeting, but I wanted to bring you back with something. So you can see the top row indicates a May bond election and the number of propositions that passed. And then our November bond elections with the number of propositions that passed. Just for perspective. And then you can go down to this chart in the blue, and it will tell you a little bit more specifically about the type of propositions, the number of voters, the number for, the number against, the percentage, and whether or not they carried or did not. So these are all of our May elections here. One that did not carry in May 2016. And that was for our newer high school phase 2 that didn't carry. And then here are our November elections, but in 2001, it was in October. Weird. A couple of things that I just noticed when I was putting these charts together was that we only had about 7,000 people vote in our last bond election. In 2010, we had a lot more, 17,000. 2006, we had about 7,000. In October of 2001, we had a large amount come out and vote for this particular school building. So I was just really looking at the total number of voters. In May, you can see the numbers are quite lower than the turnout in November. It's just interesting to look at. All that to say, this committee did advise that we put a recommendation to the board for a May 2023 bond election. So I just wanted to go over a possible timeline should this be the direction that they go. You've seen this timeline before. We would continue our growth and planning meetings up until November. We would really start to develop our bond propositions, finalize those, and of course we would call for our bond in January 2023. Now this date, January 2023, is like the last day, the deadline that we would call for a bond. We could call for a bond prior to that date. And so if that is the case, then we would definitely be able to do a lot of these things way before like this December, right? Like we would develop our bond propositions before that if the bond were called earlier. But some of the action items and things that we would need to consider and need to do in order to make that happen is we really need to conduct a voter research survey. This committee has talked about it and brought it up several times. We do have an RFP out for the second time for a voter research survey firm to conduct this survey for us. I think that in the lessons learned from our last bond, we really dropped the ball on reaching out to our broader community. And so we need to get data to see where they are and how they feel about the district. And I know that we can make and guess, we just didn't communicate with them, we didn't do this, but we want to know. We want real data versus assuming what it is that broader community where there's that disconnect, and we want to make contact with them and have some real data to be able to drive some of our decisions, especially in marketing to them. Do you like mailers? Would you prefer social media? And I can assume some of these answers, but we want to make decisions on our marketing campaign based on real data. So we will have all of our external assessment data. I believe October will be the safety and security audit data. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me. October. And so just like Ms. Scotch was talking about earlier, we've done some internal assessments on what it is that we think we need, and we've capitalized on some of that low-hanging fruit. We're working on things we can work on now, but having that external auditor come in, they will confirm some of the things that we found, and being an outsider and expert, they will probably identify some things that maybe we didn't see right away. And so we're really looking forward to that data so that we can tighten up and finalize and polish up our bond packages. We want to now, before all we can say is your voice matters, get out there and vote. We want to create buzz and we want to create awareness of a possible bond that moving forward. And we're going to start really pushing and promoting voter registration anywhere that we can. Post calling the bond starts that marketing campaign and that community outreach through various modes. In person, phone, text, more mailers, really trying to reach that broader community, really trying to get in on those informational meetings at churches, at those homeowner associations, doing radio campaigns, information sharing at events. We want to bring back the senior citizen prom since there's no more COVID, and then have little informational sessions there with our older community and invite them in. And so we are really trying to push more community outreach so that we can reach the audience, all of our audiences, all of our stakeholders, in order for this to happen. So, if the board wants us to go into a different direction and say we do strictly the security and safety bond that we were kind of talking about for November, then we would push all of these things back. But we would still have to do all of these things, but we would push them back, and we would go based on our internal assessments and the priorities that you all have identified and helped us to prioritize. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left for just some Q&A if anybody has any questions. I believe our next board meeting where we'll discuss this, somebody? Where we will take our recommendation to the board? We're going to discuss it at the August board meeting. Okay, August board meeting. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, Devin. I was almost pressing it. Just ask it, ask it.
All right. Next month, the board needs to make their decisions. October, November, we get some more information that supports the direction that we are trying to plan for. What are we doing until then? What can we do now, aside from generating buzz, that would be most beneficial for them?
We would need your help in generating the buzz. I mean, that is really the best thing. So you guys are armed with a lot of information because you've been to these meetings, and we're talking about the priorities and the things that we are needing to work on and what we need the bond monies for in order for us to be able to complete these projects. And so thank you. It's a really great question. We need the help of everyone in this room to help us to create the buzz. The community members that don't come to these meetings, that are not connected to the district because they don't have a child in the school, create the buzz, talk about it. And then also the little things too. We're about to start school. Tell the story. Tell the story of all of the great things that are happening on your campuses and all the benefits this public education institution provides to not only our students and our parents, but to our community. And what we're bringing up in our kids that are going to contribute to this great community. Those kinds of things are going to be the most helpful. And then when we have a clear, it's this date, then we'll have some more marching orders because then it'll be like, let's get out there and push. But really great question. I'm glad that you didn't hold it in. Any other questions? Oh, she's got a list. She's going to give them to me at the end. No?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know that this is like to be viewed public.
Absolutely. I can sit with you and we can look at those questions for sure. Yes. Anything else? All right, my friends. Next meeting is in August. The date escapes me. Anybody know? It's in August. I'll send you an email. August 15th? 17th. August 17th? Oh, for the next growth and planning meeting. So greatly appreciate your support, everyone. Please take chips, sandwiches, waters, and have a good evening.